Hello and welcome to the Tracy Sandler Show, brought to you by FIVO. I am your host, Tracy Sandler. And one of my favorite podcast days are when I get to bring my friends on the podcast, especially friends I love and adore, which is true of all my friends. And today is Carmen Vitali, Fox Sports NFL reporter. Carmen, welcome back to the show. And congratulations, because a few exciting things have happened for you since I last saw you.
Yeah, both personal and professional. It's been kind of a whirlwind, and I'm looking forward to a really great year and a busy year. And we're welcome to football again.
Welcome to football. I can't believe, in some ways, I can't believe it's week 2 already. In some ways, I can't believe it's only week 2 already.
Only week 2.
In some ways, I'm like, are we not at week 10? It's like kind of been.
Well, especially you with the Niners. I mean, it's just, it hasn't stopped, even in the offseason.
It has not. No, it has not. It has just been like up and down and up and down and up and down. And we're recording this Wednesday, so I'll share a little bit of what we learned today, Wednesday. And if there are any major updates, I'll add them before the podcast goes live on Friday. But Christian McCaffrey was limited in practice with calf and Achilles injury that he has been dealing with. As we know, that's what kept him out of the game Monday night. Kyle Shanahan said he is not a candidate for IR. He was asked if he was considered putting him on IR, and he said, I considered playing him Monday. So no, I am not considering putting him on IR. There's no reason, at least right now, it seems, for him to miss 4 games. So we'll see how the week goes. Christian said his mentality is he's playing this week, but then he also said that's really his mentality every week, and that's how he prepares. So certainly something to keep an eye on. But it was just like a crazy week, and Monday Night Football was less than 48 hours ago, and here, at least from the time we're recording, and here we go. Brandon Ayuk made a little bit of a funny comment that he was afraid to look at his week 1 film, so he didn't do it until this morning, and I felt like that was so relatable.
For all I know, like, I'm just not gonna watch. I'm not gonna look. I'm not gonna watch it again.
I'm just not gonna watch it. And then he was like, "But it wasn't as bad as I thought," which I also felt was relatable. For all of us.
It's never as bad as you think, and that's usually it's never as good as you think either. But it goes both ways.
That is very, very, very true. There is a phrase Kyle Shanahan uses a lot, even in big wins. By no means was it perfect. That's probably true of all of us, but we're getting through the day. But this is not a self-help podcast. This is a podcast about the 49ers and Dodgers in Michigan and football. And I've Carmen on because the 49ers head to Minneapolis this week to play the Minnesota Vikings. I have to first acknowledge the sadness that one JJ McCarthy will not be playing and that he is out for the season, and how I find that personally devastating. But for the rest of you, you may not care. The 49ers will face Sam Darnold, who had a really good week 1. Carmen, what did his performance show you and give you confidence about in the Viking season?
Honestly, it just showed me again, I should say, just how good of a coach Kevin O'Connell really is. And we saw that last year after Kirk Cousins went down, and the Vikings still managed to be competitive. They still managed to win games despite the fact that Kirk Cousins was down. They were rotating quarterbacks. In some cases, their quarterback had arrived days prior to the game and had to finish it out. It really speaks to how good of a coach Kevin O'Connell is and how he could be responsible for perhaps a career resurgence for Sam Darnold, who went 19-24, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns. And it was absolutely the performance you needed from him, but it was also not anything overly spectacular because he is surrounded by so much talent. And that is why I have been saying all offseason, all preseason, the Vikings are by no means going to be an easy out or an easy play when it comes to this season and how the division is going to stack up. The Vikings still may finish 4th in the division, but it's still going to be a 7, 8, 9 win team, even given the talent that they have on offense. And especially now that the defense is in its 3rd year under Brian Flores, it's going to look fun. It's going to look great. We saw that against the Giants. It was the Giants. I totally get that. But this team has a lot. This team is going to surprise some people this year. And it's because of the talent level on it and the coach that's kind of orchestrating everything.
And for the 49ers, they see their old friend Sam Darnold this week. He was Brock Purdy's backup last year. And Shanahan said on Wednesday, he is a starting quarterback in this league, so he was not surprised. So it will be kind of interesting to see how this season goes, for Sam Darnold. He's been in so many bad situations. He was in a good situation. I think here last year, he just didn't get the start But now I think he's in a really good situation for him. And you can hear background noise. You guys are at Levi Stadium, and it just is what it is. There's always a
It is
lot
what
going
it
on
is.
here. It is what it is. But let's talk about this Brian Flores defense, because we saw the 49ers offense do really well on Monday night, and that was without Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, Jordan Mason had an incredible game, literal career night, and filled in just beautifully. Brandon Ayuk was, a bit on a snap out and rotated, so he's still kind of finding his footing. But the offense looked great. And now they go against this Brian Flores defense. I thought the Jets defense was going to be a really, really good defense. And perhaps it will be. It just didn't perform to the level that I was expecting. What are the 49ers and Brock Purdy going to see with the Vikings this week?
Yeah, you're going to see a team that, Brian Flores loves to blitz. That's no secret. He did it at the highest clip last year, and he picked up right where he left off this last week, or the first week of the season. And the difference this year, though, is that seems to be that the pressures or the blitzing, I should say, are resulting in pressures and sacks. They got 5 sacks on Daniel Jones, which, again, you need to figure out, is that because of the Giants O-line, or was that because of the Giants O-line? Was that more because of the Vikings and what their personnel is now? But they do have more than Brian Flores has ever had to work with. When you talk about Jonathan Grenard, and you now have Dallas Turner, the rookie, on the other side of him, those are potentially 2 double-digit sack guys. And Andrew Van Ginkel has been reunited with Brian Flores. He was in Miami with Flo before, is now there, had a pick 6 in this last game against the Giants to round out the game at the end of it. And this is the kind of stuff that you wanted to see that just didn't quite hit last year when it came to this Vikings defense. For as much as they blitzed, they just weren't getting home. They've started to get home. So I expect that, I know that the Niners have a wonderful offensive line. You've got Trent Williams, who is the best left tackle in football still. You have Brock Purdy, who has just an elevated football IQ, knows when to get rid of the ball, knows how to process the game, knows how to process and recognize blitzes and all that kind of, and pressure and all that kind of stuff. But Brian Flores does not make it easy. He loves those type of simulated pressures to kind of get quarterbacks off their game and on their heels. And I fully expect him to come after Brock Purdy this week.
And I'm glad you brought up Trent Williams, who gave up 0 pressures the other night for Next Gen Stats on 33 attempts, 0, which just reiterated how important he is, this offensive line, and how important it was that they got that deal done before the season started. Rookie Dominic Cooney has done really well. This line, I think, is a lot better than, I think it's always been better than fans and maybe the public, for lack of a better term, think it is. But I think this year it's elevated even more. And so they will have their hands full. And I think it's going to be really a fun matchup to watch. Let's talk Niners defense, though. They have Nick Bosa. They have somebody finally on the other side of him in Leonard Floyd. And we saw on Monday night what a great combination they could be, getting to the quarterback, sacking the quarterback. And they really haven't had someone like that opposite Bosa since Dee Ford in 2019. So this is a huge thing for San Francisco. And I think we really saw that the line, I've been saying this all offseason, losing Eric Armstead's a huge loss, but on the aggregate, the line got better. And I think that we saw that. On top of that, of course, you have Fred Warner, and he just is flying all over the place and seems to be having an all-pro season in week 1. And then the secondary is massively improved. Deommodore Lenoir and Charvarius Ward are 2 of the top corners in this league. If you look at the game and film the other night, they were scared to death to throw towards Charvarius Ward. They just didn't do that. They didn't have much success going against Lenoir, but they're scared to throw against him. What challenges does this provide for Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson?
Yeah, it's not only Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson, though. Justin Jefferson, he had 7 targets last week, 4 catches, 59 yards, had the receiving touchdown. 2 of his catches gained a first down, and he even had a drop. So, you consider that the damage could have been worse. Nobody's perfect, but the damage could have been worse in that regard. But not only do you have him, we're going to see what happens with Jordan Addison and that ankle injury, but you have Aaron Jones on the Minnesota Vikings now. And he seems to be a great
new man on the Minnesota Vikings.
Exactly. Thanks, Lizzo. He looks to be... That's why I love coming on this podcast, and Tracy, because you get Lizzo references and just things that you're not going to get otherwise. I adore it.
That's how we do. That's how we do it.
But Aaron Jones looks like he's fitting right into Minnesota's scheme. I mean, he
Mhm.
had per PFF, he had 5 rushes that gained over 10 yards, 10 or more yards, which was first in the NFL, tied for
Mhm.
first in the NFL. 6 rushes gaining a first down, which was tied for third. So, or 6, excuse me. It He is a hugely productive player for this offense, and he provides something that Sam Darnold can lean on. And it
Mhm.
also makes this offense extremely dynamic and extremely hard to defend because it's very well rounded. And when you have a guy like Justin Jefferson, and oh, by the way, we should hopefully see some more out of TJ Hawkinson, stuff like that. There
Mhm.
are so many different elements to this offense, and Kevin O'Connell's one of the best play callers in this league. He comes from the Shanahan McVay tree. He was with
Mhm.
McVay in LA. So it's like it has the student become the master when it comes to
Ooh.
offensive football. And they don't quite use running backs in the way that Kyle Shanahan loves to do and stuff like that. But Aaron Jones really is, I think, going to be a factor in this game. And you're going to have to limit his explosiveness so that you can kind of slow down what this Minnesota offense can be if Sam Darnold continues to click because he's got so many weapons at his disposal.
When you look at the Minnesota defense, I'm going to ask you this for both sides of the ball. But when you look at the defense, what do you think is their biggest challenge when they face the 49ers? Who, maybe it's one player, maybe it's an aggregate, but what do you think is really going to be their biggest challenge?
From Minnesota's defensive perspective,
From Mona's defense, like kind of what's their, maybe, and I should probably phrase it differently. What's a little bit of their weakness, perhaps, that the 49ers can capitalize on? Maybe that's how I should phrase it.
yeah, that's it's absolutely their secondary. They're
Mhm.
just thin there, and I think that there is an opportunity to kind of attack the outside and get some guys going. As far as if that's Brandon Ayuk and who needs to
Mhm.
kind of get a better game on
Mhm.
tape, as you talked about
Mhm.
him not wanting to see his week 1 tape. Is that going to give him more motivation to come back and be that true outside guy that Brock Purdy can rely on? It's going to be very interesting to see like if CMC is part of this offense
Right.
because again when that happens it's just the breadth of the 49ers playbook when he is in the game is just hard to defend. But I really do think that if you're going to beat this Minnesota defense, you're going to have to get the ball out fast, like I said, because
Mhm.
Brian Flores is going to bring those pressures and he's going to bring those blitzes. But if you can get it out, get it to the outside, try and attack those corners, try and attack even the safeties. Byron Murphy, we're hoping that he kind of has a better year than we've seen. He has all of the potential in the world, and he has had games, really, really good games last year. And you're just kind of hoping that he really puts it all together and becomes like that leader that this Minnesota secondary needs.
Secondary, the secondary, I feel like around the league, there are two position groups around the league that I feel like teams are always struggling with. The offensive line,
Mm-hmm.
because there's just not that many good offensive linemen, which is why you see the really good ones get paid tremendous money that they deserve. And secondaries. I think and corner is a tough position to play, but I feel like these are the two positions that every year when I'm talking about an opposing team, it's one of these two positions that ends up being the weakness, which is interesting. It makes sense. And both
Yeah.
secondaries are going to have their hands full because we haven't even
Yes.
talked about Deebo Samuel yet. And he was used a lot more in the run game on Monday with Christian McCaffrey being out. But he's a man on a mission. It's something we saw
Mm-hmm.
all through training camp. This is a man on a mission, and he is so locked in. And I just think he looks like he's taken a step to the next level. As you mentioned, Brandon Ayuk, and I mentioned the film earlier. Second game in, he will be different. He will be better. Much was made of the pass thrown to him in the end zone. It was a perfectly thrown pass by Purdy that went right through his hands. And much was made that if you're going to ask for top money, you got to make the catches, which I don't disagree with. I think he will do that. And he
Mm-hmm.
may do that on Sunday. He might come in Sunday feeling like he has a little bit more to prove. But this 49ers team, not just for this game, but I think for the rest of the league, I was thinking about this yesterday. It must feel a little scary that this is a team currently without Christian McCaffrey, without Dre Greenlaw, without Yetur Gross-Matos said that line, somebody that they really are excited about on the defensive line. There are people missing from this team that are kind of a big deal. And
Yeah.
we saw kind of domination on Monday night, which surprised me, to be honest with you. I actually didn't even think they were going to win because I just felt like there was going to be rust and the hold-ins and the holdouts and the
Yes.
Jets have such a good defense and all that. But yeah, I think for the rest of the league, and I bring this up also for you because the 49ers are going to be playing the NFC North the rest of the season. And obviously, a lot of those games are down the road, like way down the road. But you look at this team, you're not ingrained in it every single day. Does this seem like they're still the best team in the NFC?
Yeah, I think that they're going to have some competition at the top there with the Detroit Lions, namely in the NFC North. I really do feel like the Lions are probably the best team in this division just because of how complete they are. They had one blemish on that team last season, and it was the secondary. Talk about how it's hard to really field. And it's because those are positions that get hurt so easy. The injury bug strikes the secondary, I think, in a disproportionate amount, but it's just the nature of the positions that they play. And Brad Holmes was finally, the general manager in Detroit, was finally like, hey, enough is enough. I'm going to field a complete secondary, come hell or high water. And they went out and they traded for Carlton Davis during free agency from Tampa. They also then went and used their first 2 draft picks on corners. It wasn't necessarily, that wasn't necessarily their plan. They knew they wanted to take Terrion Arnold in that first round. But when Ennis Rakestraw was still there on day 2, they were like, all right, well, we had a first round grade. That's not exactly how they grade out there in Detroit, but they had a first round grade on Ennis Rakestraw. And now they have that's become a strength, I think, of this team and how deep it is. And they can definitely withstand some more injuries there, though knock on wood, hopefully they still don't happen. I also think that from what we saw in the Eagles in Brazil, I don't want to glean too much on that game, but the Eagles and the Packers are also going to be 2 teams that are gunning for tops in this division, or in this conference, excuse me. Even with Jordan Love now out a couple of weeks, Packers seem optimistic that it's going to be limited as far as, 2 to 3 weeks, and then he can come back. But you look at the Eagles too. I mean, adding Saquon Barkley to that offense, and then more importantly, having stability with Kellen Moore, a proven offensive coordinator in this league, to take over. They're right there as well when you look at the totality of their offense and even their defense too, the team in general. The 49ers have competition. It's not going to be as easy, I think, as it may have been last year. I still think the NFC is the weaker of the 2 conferences between the AFC and the NFC. So you might have a little bit easier of a path and say Chiefs, the Ravens, Bengals, Bills, whoever it is you want to pick in the AFC. But the Niners are still up there. And we saw that bottom line, on Monday night, especially when like you said, without Christian McCaffrey, having Jordan Mason go off 28 attempts, which is insane for even Niners standards or Shanahan standards, because it was the most attempts by any running back under Kyle Shanahan, which I found actually really crazy given his penchant for using his backs. It just let you know that the Niners have some depth. They have ways to kind of make up for certain absences and stuff. Whereas last year, I think, you saw Debo go out. It coincided with some of the games that Trent Williams also missed. And you realized that it looked like they were a little bit thinner than maybe they are now in any case.
I would say that's true definitely everywhere except on the offensive line. Trent Williams, he's the key to this offense. And it's
yes.
People, people who don't really know football and maybe don't really know, or the more casual fan is maybe how I should say it, or not ingrained with 49ers. He's the key to this offense. This team, I hate to say it, is one Trent Williams injury away from not going to the Super Bowl. So hopefully he'll be fine. But I think that's just like it's so interesting that the left tackle on this team, with all of the talent they have and everything they have, that is actually the one place where they're just not as deep, and they need to just bubble wrap him and guard him at all costs because he's just very, very important. He's very, very important.
They can rest easy knowing that Trent Williams is built different.
He is literally and figuratively definitely built different. And those games that you mentioned, those are 3 games that they lost, was 3 in a row that they lost. One of them being to the Minnesota Vikings in Minneapolis. And that was kind of a weird game too, because that was the game that had the weird defensive play. I mean, that the Niners just got killed on. Minneapolis scores going into halftime. I think that was pretty much the beginning of the end of Steve Wilkes. It may have started a little bit before then, but that was pretty much, I think, just like the beginning of the end. Brock Purdy threw multiple interceptions. He got a concussion, they think, in that game. This is like a really weird game. So I'm sure they're hoping for better results in this one for sure. But it's kind of funny because
I came across a stat, Tracy, that I need to tell you.
Bring me a stat.
I mean, you're not going to like it, or if Niners fans are not going to like it. This comes from Dustin Baker. He does a lot for on the Vikings beat and on Vikings Twitter. But the 49ers have not won in Minneapolis in 32 years. And they lost 7 consecutive games at the Metrodome and US Bank Stadium. So,
I mean, I knew it was 32 years. I didn't know. I've
they have
covered
not
multiple
won.
games where they've lost their.
They've lost 7 straight in the Metrodome and US Bank. And then they have not won in Minneapolis in 32 years.
Well, 49ers fans, I'm going to tell you something that I say when I watch the Dodgers. And the announcer says, well, Will Smith is 0 for his last 12. And my positive there is, well, then he is due or he's going to strike out. But I like to go with he is due. So 49ers fans, they've lost 7
straight. They're due for a win in Minneapolis.
They're due for a win in Minneapolis, or they're going to come home 1-1 and it'll be fine. So we'll see how that goes. That's very interesting. I didn't realize it was that many. I covered a game there in 2018. Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback, and it was the opening game of the season, and they lost that one. So they lost the one last year, but 7 straight is
I'm trying to remember if the game against the Niners was either where I think it was the game where Justin Jefferson got hurt. So
no, he was already hurt.
He was already hurt. So
he was already hurt. And so it was the second. It was the week after.
Got hurt?
No, Kirk Cousins got hurt the week after because the 49ers saw multiple teams last year and got beat by multiple teams where the next week the quarterback went down for the season. It happened with the Bengals and it happened with the Vikings. Justin Jefferson had been hurt the week before because there was questions if he going to play.
Right. And everybody was like, oh, they don't have a shot without Justin Jefferson. And they did. So
turns out
that was a big game for Jordan Addison. I recall this now. That was a big game for Jordan Addison. His little coming out party. So we'll see, but the 49ers may not have to deal with him this round. We'll see.
They may not. Well, we shall see. But as we saw last year, that will not dictate what happens in this game. So let's talk a little actually before we get to game prediction, I have a question for you that I was thinking about earlier. And I do feel like maybe I say this every year after week 1 and we just don't remember. But does it feel like there have been an inordinate amount of injuries in this first week? Or is this happen every year and I just keep forgetting?
No, I think it does happen every year. I do think that there have been a few more high profile ones just kind of in week 1. And I think coming into the season, you had more question marks. Like looking across the league at different injury reports prior to week 1, I was just kind of taken aback by like the number of guys that were on those. And it's interesting too, because you think that a shorter preseason, 3 games instead of 4 means that you would have guys fresher and healthier. And like, that's kind of the purpose of it. But like, there are certain trends that I saw in week 1. The quarterback play was just atrocious. I mean, there were only 14 quarterbacks that threw for over 200 yards. That means over half the league didn't, which is just, it's bad. It's very bad. And one of the other more like kind of nuanced or under the radar things that I saw happening across the league as I went back and watched all these games, there were multiple teams were rotating offensive linemen. And like the Bears did it. I was at the Bears game. The Bears did it at the right guard spot. The Ravens started the season on Thursday night doing it, trying to get their second round pick, Roger Rosengarten, some playing time in there. They're putting him all over the line. I actually talked to Tevin Jenkins in the locker room at the Bears game or after the Bears game on Sunday. And I was like, does it seem like, is that a philosophy shift like from your coach or whatever? And he's like, no, he's like, I don't think so. He's like, I don't like it. He's like, while he doesn't, he plays left guard. So he plays on the other side of the center, but he's like, when you have a guy out, not only is that guy, going in, coming out, but then you also have to deal with the 2 guys next to him, having to adjust for who's playing next to them and not really getting to get into a groove with that. I'm so vehemently against rotating offensive linemen because there's 5 guys that have to work as one. And throwing off the chemistry of that is just it's a recipe for disaster. So I think like it leads me to think, is that because teams don't have as many reps in preseason to really solidify who their front 5 are going to be on offense? I don't know the answer to that, but it's kind of a disturbing trend I saw. And then like, just if we're talking broader trends in week 1 between injuries, poor quarterback play, poor, offensive line management, and who knows, maybe that quarterback play suffered because you're shuffling your offensive line. I don't know. It's all a domino effect. And my head is, as we were talking about before we got on, my brain is spinning.
Well, I'll be interested to see how that trend continues over the next few weeks, especially the rotation of the offensive line, because you're right. If there was ever a position group that needed to be cohesive and have incredible chemistry, that is definitely it. So
Yeah.
will be interesting to see how this plays out literally and figuratively over the next several weeks. So before I let you go, let's do a game prediction. Who's going to win? You don't have to give me a score because personally I'm awful at scores, so I don't like to make other people do
I
it.
do.
But who do you think is going to win?
I might go for the upset. I don't
Do it.
know. I'm going to go for the upset in Minnesota because I don't think that the Sam Darnold train is going to stop. And I also think that whether it's because Kevin O'Connell is kind of a disciple of this tree, he kind of knows how to get his defense going against it. And he also knows where its weaknesses lie. I don't know. But the Vikings, for whatever reason, have given the 49ers fits when they are in Minneapolis, like we talked about. So I don't know. I'll say the Vikings, and then maybe that'll mean that the Niners end up breaking the streak.
The Sam Darnold revenge game, though, you just cannot discount that part of it.
That's true.
For sure.
You can't discount that. That's true.
I am going to pick the Niners because last week I picked them to lose, and I was so wrong on that one. And I'm going to go with my Dodgers thing, even though 49ers fans will hate that this has anything to do with the Dodgers. But I'm going to go with my Dodgers thing is that I think they're due for a win in Minneapolis. So I'm going to pick them to win this week. Now, if they lose this week, and I've now picked wrong both the last 2 weeks, then I'm going to have to like kind of rethink everything about myself and what I do. But we'll see how it goes this week. But the biggest thing I think is also going to be McCaffrey. I'm very curious not for this game, but what it means long term if he does in fact not play on Sunday, if he plays. So we shall see.
It's a little unfair to ask for predictions when we don't know if Christian McCaffrey's playing yet, because I think that probably sways my opinion if he does.
But Jordan Mason, Jordan Mason's an incredible talent. He's not Christian McCaffrey because there's only one Christian McCaffrey. But I think Jordan Mason showed the other night that they can still run their offense. It's still a run first offense. They can still do the things they want to do. George Kittle said after the game, without McCaffrey, the playbook is a little bit simpler and just kind of easier for him to digest and really for everybody to digest. But of course, when you add McCaffrey to the playbook, that has positives too. So we'll see. But I will just go with that because I feel like they're due. 7 losses in a row feels like a lot. So I'm going to go with that. And there we are. Carmen, please let everyone know where they can find you.
You can find me in a lot of places, and the centralized location is to find me at Carmi V on Twitter and Instagram, and you can keep up with all of the things that I do, including PFF preview show every Thursday, Fox Sports Radio on Saturdays. I appear on the NFL on Fox podcast every Monday, and you can check out my written work on foxsports.com.
See, you can find her a lot of places. You guys, I am on Twitter and X at Tracy FGSN, on Instagram and TikTok at Tracy Sandler. All of our work is on FGSN.com. And make sure to head to at Fangirl Sports Network. And last thing, subscribe to our newsletter. When you go to the website, it pops right up. We have like a new revamped newsletter. I'm having so much fun writing it. So make sure you're subscribed to that. And with that, we are brought to you by FIVO. We are brought to you by Bet Online. Please leave us a great review. And with that, I'll talk to you next time. Bye all.